back to Sharon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the work session for March the 7th, 2019. We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome our guests, our aspiring leaders and principals for our county and for our program that we've been instituted that Dr. Cole was so graciously approving of, and thank y'all for being here. We appreciate you coming and seeing exactly the minds at work. Hope we don't scare y'all off.
It's punishment.
So thank y'all for being here. We appreciate what you're doing for our county and for our system and for our students, and anything that we can do to help, we'd love to do that. So welcome again. We'll jump into items of information. Dr. Cole.
Thank you, Chairman Mansell. Our first area under focus area was 1, effective leadership concerning our FY20 budget update. So I'll turn over to Mrs. Preston for that.
I don't really have any major changes from the last meeting, except for, the governor was talking about $3,000 for teachers for next year, and they actually lowered it to $2,775 to all the certified staff in the funding formula. So it actually worked out to our advantage because I had already included employees getting the $3,000 that they weren't going to fund. So now they're actually including some of those employees. So our revenue projection actually went up from the state by $2,089,600, which cut into our budget deficit, so it reduced it down to 3.8. We're going to have a finance meeting before the next work session on March 28th, and we'll be finished with staffing, and so you'll see all the different changes for that at the next meeting. I did talk to the tax assessor today, and he said he will not have anything for me until mid-April. So that's still, an estimate of 4% is what I use. Hopefully it'll be better than that. But other than that, I don't really have any changes today.
So as Ms. Preston mentioned, before our March 28th work session, we will have a finance committee at 4:30, and then we'll go to our work session right after that. So that'll give you more time to talk. We'll just be more time for that, and allotted for that time to do that. So. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Preston. Our next area is school status reports, and that'll be Mrs. Lewis and Dr. King.
Every 9 weeks at the conclusion of the grading period, we've asked our schools to prepare certain data elements for us to go through. I'd like to briefly go through those so that you understand that during these 9-week reviews, what exactly we cover. And so we're approaching the end of this 9 weeks. We'll do another one. Glynn Academy is a great example of the school status reports. So if you just click through these, go to the next one. We talk about attendance, and we talk about, those that have 0 days and those who have 10 and up days. So again, a good focus. We talk about the names that are associated with those. They also break it down by the grade levels, and as you see here, and we do this at kindergarten through 5th grade. We do it in middle school as well as a high school. So again, we track this each and every 9 weeks. Go to the next one. We also talk about staff and faculty, and we talk about the sick and personal days for them as well as we go through this, so that they can explain if somebody is out of a different tolerance level that we need to be concerned about. Go to the next one. We talk about discipline, and we compare semester to semester as well, so they can look at what happened last year at the same time, what's happening this year. Go to the next one. We also track individuals. So if you look at this particular chart, basically for the number of referrals, students who have 8 referrals, there are 5 students with 8 referrals. So we go through this as well so we can see who are recurring individuals, and we talk about the specifics. Go to the next one. Break it down by the actual offenses, and it compares by grade level. If you go to the next one, we look at the number of ISS days, and we balance it based on the comparison from last year, same time frame, so that we can see whether they're up or down. If you go to the next one, we do the same thing for out of school suspensions. Keep going. We also look at something with disproportionality and start looking specifically of where do these events take place, who's our primary individuals that have issues, and we start talking about what can we do to resolve some of these issues. You go to the next one. Outside of their schools, such as placement at Glynn Learning Center, who's over there? When's the last time a counselor went over there? You know, our expectation is that a minimum of once a week somebody goes over there to talk with the students. Go to the next one. Coastal Academy, the same thing. If you go to the next one. We also ask them, we have specific requirements each month, the number of drills that they're supposed to conduct, red, yellow, blue, etc. So we ask them to give us an update of where they stand on that. Go to the next one. Continue, keep going. We go through the staff evaluations, and again, we have the flex, which allows for those veteran teachers that they have certain number of evaluations they get. Same thing with the teachers who get full evaluations, and then our leaders, and then those individuals who may be contributing professionals. Go to the next slide. Where do they stand with completing each of those evaluations? Keep going. For both the flex, the full, keep going. And the same thing for the leaks for our leaders. Talent Ed, where do they stand on completing the different levels of expectations for evaluations? Keep going on that. Ms. Lewis, would you like to talk to this a little?
Each school has a professional learning plan, and so we go over through. We have mandated PL that we expect our instructional coaches to go back and re-deliver, along with what the principal seems to think that they need. So we try to help prioritize, and this is just a document to show what's been re-delivered and when. So we make sure that we are maintaining focus where we need to focus on.
Go to that next slide. And again, we also ask them specifically to talk about what are they doing to improve their CCRPI, and so, you know, they talk about each of these points. Keep going. One of the most the time that's really spent oftentimes on this particular area, you know, what do they need? What exactly do we need to look at? So every school provides, here are our concerns, and we discuss those concerns in detail so that we can figure out what can we do to resolve them. It might be the last slide, graduation rate comes up. Dual enrollment for the college, we talked about that. And again, as you see, we have a lot of students that are attending college courses. This is one for College Coast of Georgia. Go to that next slide. Coastal Pines, the number of students that are there, and you can see in both cases the numbers are up, and we again talk about the dual enrollment process. And then we have a grand total. If you go, we have others actually that we offer courses through. So Georgia Tech, for example, offers some courses that students are able to take. Keep going. And then we have the total for each. Both high schools provide this information. If you go to the next slide. We talk about our graduation rate. We do so by cohort. So as we break it down, we want to know how many are on track to graduate, how many are still missing some, and what is your plan to bring them up. So in this case, for Glynn Academy, again, you'll see that their projections right now are around 95%. You know, could go up to 96% if they can get those individuals that are there. We talk about how to move those students. We also talk about the next one, which is our special ed numbers for that same cohort. Go to the next one. And so we talk about, you know, where do we stand with those particular students and how do we bring them up? That number of 90% is extremely high. It's higher than the state average, but we need to talk about how do we bring them up. Keep going. And then we look at the next year. Where do they stand for the 2020? And they do by name, you know, where they stand. Go to the next one. And the same thing for our special ed students. It might be the last one for Glynn Academy. Can you quickly pull up Glynn Middle Schools? And let's kind of scroll through there until you get to the professional learning. Keep going. And Ms. Lewis will talk about, you know, what we've asked. And Glynn Middle is given a great example of the discussion points on the academic. Right there's, keep going a little bit more. Keep going, keep going. And again, you see, this is the same requirements right there.
So this is a plan. I love each school does theirs just a little bit different, but this is their learning focus plan where they have goal 1 and what they're targeting, and the plan, assess, and teach, and that's just a cycle that we're doing. And it goes along with our visible learning. I think she has one more. Go through next slide. And these are her focus. And this is how we assist schools. We work with the instructional coach, we work with the principal, and when they list these areas, then they tell us these are the strengths, these are the areas that we need more assistance with. I go to the next one, I think that's goal 1. And there's, she breaks it all the way down to seeing what data is used to drive the professional learning. Because it's not just about looking at data, it's how we're using data to change instruction. That is key. And they did a very good job with that.
Keep going.
And this is her goal number 2. Visible learning is new, relatively new to us, so we're learning it, and they're learning their success criteria, and they're modeling what we expect our teachers to model.
Okay, keep rolling.
And they did a great job. They just listed all the professional learnings that they've had thus far.
Okay, keep going, Chris. I think that might be around that. And then they talk about their status of the different levels. Can you pull up the next document for us? And that's the SSR agenda.
So the first set of slides that you saw are generated by the school. The school pulls up their data and we discuss and how we can assist. The second part of the agenda, where it says literacy questions to discuss, these are questions that we ask to find out what the impact of the curriculum looks like in the schools. It's not just looking at, we can pull reports from Achieve 3000, we can pull reports from Read 180, but we gave some thought-provoking questions for instructional coaches to be with each team. Sometimes it's each with grade levels, sometimes it's content teachers. But when they answer all these questions, you see them for elementary and for middle, and there's literacy and math. We also pull all the instructional coaches together, and we put them in cohorts together, and we go over this. Because it might be something that we see pervasive through all the schools. It might be just one school needing a very specific item. But this gives us an idea of where our teachers are and how better to support them.
So we want them to own their data and be able to explain where they're at and what they're doing and then to ask us, how can we help them as well? So we do this again every 9 weeks, so 4 SSRs throughout the course of the year.
And to keep our eyes on the targets that we all need to look at together, we do have our content coordinators pull data as well. So we're looking at the same report for each school. So that's given to the principals ahead of time.
That's the update. Any questions on the school status reports?
It's all about knowing what the impact looks like at that school and how we can support them.
A lot of information.
It was a great practice. In fact, when we went through our advanced ed review, a lot of the people that were reviewing our school system made comments about this. In fact, wanted to borrow this practice for their own school system. So it's obviously a model, and I think one that we're very proud of. And so I appreciate the work that both Dr. Lewis and Ms. Lewis, and as well as others, a lot of other team members helped with that process.
Yeah, and I want to inject there that I don't know if we said this at the beginning, but it's not just Dr. Poulos and I going. It's the cabinet, the directors, special ed, everyone's there at the table. So each department can show support in an area that shows up. Because it might be, oh, I didn't think about that. And we can help you with this area. So it's a collaborative effort. It's not a show, and it's not a presentation. It is truly a collaborative conversation that we want to have with the school to say, this is how we want to support you.
And it's not a gotcha moment. It's really intended to move the schools forward.
It might feel that way sometimes, but it's not meant to. And we have had one school that we actually did one in between. So while this is the second SSR, we had a 2.5 for a particular school that we thought needed additional support. You're welcome to come anytime.
Thank you. Any questions for them about that? All right. Our next area is under Focus Area 2, Coherent Instructional System, and we have an update on our winter milestones in the course.
Yes, sir. So this afternoon, I'm sharing with you our winter December scores for the high school end of course assessment results. What you'll see within the beginning of this section of slides will show you where we stand when compared to RESA in the state, for First District RESA in the state. Chris, if you don't mind that second slide there, thank you. This shows you that for levels 3 and 4, that you may recall are the levels that the state recognizes as on track for college and career ready. Which subject areas we have as a district that we are above RESA in the state. And we have one subject area where we're above RESA but not above state for geometry. And then the one subject area out of all 8 subjects that are tested in high school, physical science did not make either of these highlight slides, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. If you don't mind going on to this one. Again, last year when we started looking at this data, not just showing where we are with 3s and 4s, but it was important as well to take a look at where we are with students that are in higher percentages at level 4. You'll see that Algebra 1 has made the list for us now as a district in this set of data to show that we are higher than RESA at level 4. The other subjects, we added U.S. history to higher numbers in level 4 for RESA and the state. The other subjects we had been performing well with. But then just as important is to look at the percentages of students that are in level 1, those students that aren't making the necessary achievement levels that we need. We are lower than RESA and the state in 7 out of those 8 areas. So we're having more students that are performing and gaining scores that are showing that they're proficient and above than our comparative groups across the state. So if we move forward, I did provide, again, just some context if you were looking at the slides before or if you go back to look at them, to give you information when you're looking at future slides that in 15 and 16 we actually had curriculum changes in those subject areas. And if we move forward, Chris, the next will show again how those scores calculate over so that you have that reminder that a level 2 score, when calculated over for CCRPI, is going to give a 0.5 value. A level 3 will give a point, and a level 4 will be a 1.5. And again, anybody who's in level 4 is going to be a 0 point value. As a reminder, this past school year, we did start with retesting students at level 1. So when we look at CCRPI, the highest score that a student makes within that calendar year is what will count toward the CCRPI calculation for the school. If we move forward, just a brief explanation again that the state gives for each of those achievement levels. And then I just wanted to orient you to the slide order and what you find on each slide, and then those are repetitive by content area. So if we move forward, we will see 9th grade lit and composition. This first slide for each content area are the percentages of students at levels 3 and 4, and it gives you trend data. So from 14 through 18, where we are for each high school as a system, and then compare us to RESA and the state. And you can see on this particular subject and on most of them, there's this, consistent trend upward as we're looking. If we go to the next slide, this shows you a 3-year data set for where the schools are with each level, each achievement level. Level 1 being red, level 2 yellow, 3 green, and the level 4s are blue. So that you can see where we stand with each of those. And then the last graph slide for each content area shows where we rank within First District RESA, but this includes level 2 through 4. So where we're topping out at 3 and 4, this shows you where other districts are having higher numbers at level 2 than we are. And so that may change our rank order on this last graph for each of the content areas. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at each content. I'm happy to go through each one, but I will say if you've looked, you probably noticed physical science. And if we can go down, Chris, I think it's going to be a little ways further in. Thank you. Whoop, right there. So for physical science, not only did physical science have a change in standards during the 17-18 year, Glynn County made a move of physical science. Physical science traditionally was a 9th grade course for us, and we still had our honors level students taking physical science as 8th graders. So we will still see those 8th grade results in the spring scores, but remember they're not testing until spring. Our high schoolers who haven't had physical science are taking it as 11th graders now instead of as 9th grade. So we've kind of created our own gap in scores there. So students that have tested in winter for physical science are students who are either retaking the course or who have just got to the point where they are somewhat ready for that in the gap. And as a system, we only had 51 students take the physical science test in winter. So it's a very small number of students, and it is culling out your honors level students at that point for the data set. So you do see not a positive trend on the physical science for winter scores. I did want to make a point to talk about why that one seems to be an anomaly for us. I don't know if you had any questions about any other content areas or.
I just have a question about what they are taking as ninth graders. If they didn't take physical science in 8th grade and they aren't taking it in 9th grade.
So if they didn't take physical science in 8th grade, a lot of the students are going into environmental science as freshmen, and then taking biology as 10th grade students, and then picking up physical science in 11th grade. So
And
the
if they
environmental
took it,
science.
yeah, and if they took the physical science in 8th grade, then they'll jump into biology and
Right,
move from there.
right. What about chemistry? What
That's
is
the
that
next
for?
step after that.
That's senior year? Okay.
And the next year, we'll have a full,
Yes.
we'll finally have all of our,
Next year we'll
all
be
our
back.
students will
Yes.
be caught up. So we'll have a realistic picture of what physical science is and not.
And there were a lot of reasons we moved physical science to that level. We're, part of that, it was a conscious decision to move it for the preparation that needed to go into the physical science with math as well as everything, so.
Thank you.
Any questions about that? I think good results. I think we stack up very well, and I think we're headed certainly in the right direction, so I'm very, very happy with that. Anybody else have questions on that? All right, I think at this point, we'll start with our Mr. Boudreau show with our facilities update. So I'll turn over to you, Mr. Boudreau.
Thank you, Dr. Pope. Start out with Glynn Academy. First on the list is the historic GA building. There is nothing new to report since the last meeting. Next building is Sidney Lanier. Last reported, we were a little concerned about schedule. The contractor, Tyson, has delivered a schedule to us that still gives us the building last week of June, which we were expecting all along. So they have a way to make up their what they've lost in the since the project started. And that's gonna go okay. I feel it's okay now. Fencing plans, I think. The city is meeting.
Well, they were supposed to have met last night about the Mansfield Street, and we were notified that they pushed it off until next month. So the intent is hopefully to go through there again and just to emphasize to them the significance that we feel is that they need to increase the security and allow us to close that off. So that's where it stands right now. Mr. Blackstone and I will both attend that meeting once they reschedule it.
And I happened to see the mayor today, and he feels, confident that they'll support that, so.
They give a timeline or anything. I mean, all the stuff we've done, or deeded land and for $1 and everything else we've done, they can't act on it.
He said 2 weeks, I think, is what.
Next
Drum
meeting.
said, which is,
The next meeting.
The 20th is when.
The
they're
next
gonna be-
meeting.
So we're hopeful at that point they'll do
Okay.
that. I think they had a real busy agenda last night, from what I can tell.
Science building, we opened proposals last Thursday, a week ago, 28th, and we are still vetting those proposals and trying to work through some issues. And we hope to have that to you on the 28th with a solid recommendation for starting the science building renovation. Questions?
How many responses did you have? Was it pretty good? Or?
Four, and all fairly competitive.
Okay.
Two that we've narrowed it down to for the
All right.
ones. We just have some issues to work through. When we spread the numbers, there's some areas that we're trying to get down a little bit and just work it out so we can make a good recommendation.
Okay.
Waiting until 28 won't hurt us. So we'd rather take the time and get it right. Athletic fields, what we're talking about there is fencing, and Mr. Tootin and I are going to sit down in May and come up with a plan that makes sense for redoing the fencing. This will be our opportunity to get some input and get the fence laid out to meet our future needs. So we're going to do that in May. Drop-off canopies, nothing new to report. To the Marsh parking lot, nothing new to report. New Burroughs Millette, a little bit to report there. We got moved in. It was an experience, but we started on Friday the 22nd, and Monday morning, the the whole school was occupied. My crew did a great job, but in the end, it was really the Brunswick staff that made it work. They had their rooms looking great on Monday. Kids were excited, the staff was excited, but they deserve a big round of applause for what they did. They went over and above. They really did.
Yes, they did.
And the school's beautiful, it's comfortable, it's clean. We're not near finished yet. We still have to tear down the old school and do all that, but that will start on April 1st, the asbestos abatement. And the objective is to try to get front drive, parking, and all the playground done by the time we start school in August. That's the objective.
And so you know they're planning an open house dedication on April 11th at from 4 to 6, I believe. So they'll have a ceremony at the beginning and then a drop-in so community members can come and take a look at that facility. So we're excited about that. So there'll be more coming out on that from Brittany and others. So just want to put that out there for everybody.
You said April 11th?
Yes, ma'am. It's the Thursday after spring break.
Thank you.
And even with a new building, we've had very few issues. We had a couple drain lines stop up, and Don would say leak here and there, but the building is very comfortable and operating very well for a brand new school. Stadium renovations, they're still on track to give it to us in June. It's looking good over there. If you haven't been by, you might want to go by and take a peek. It's quite a building. It'll be very nice. I think I'm gonna move my office up there. Altamont Elementary School, I think Mr. Tootin had a slide that shows you the modifications and alterations we did on the site plan. If you remember, the original site plan had a bus loop that went all the way around the perimeter of the site. And we condensed that to have a turnaround at the back of the school, eliminating the road that went around the perimeter of the site. As you can see here, we've left a very healthy buffer to the south. To the south is the retirement community of Pepper Tree. And we've left a 50-foot undisturbed buffer there to try to make that a little more likable for that community. And really it shouldn't, this plan shouldn't have much of an impact on that residential community. To the north is a 30-foot undisturbed buffer. And anything else you want to add, Mr. Tootin or Brock?
We met with the county last week, and we talked about the notion of moving a traffic signal from existing Alabama to this new location. They advised us that a traffic study was necessary per regulations in order to relocate a traffic signal. So we are in the process of developing proposals for a traffic analysis of the new site, and that will be underway. As you can see, buses will enter from the northerly direction on Alabama. There is not a crossover at that north entrance, the top entrance as you're looking at the site. So they will enter and turn around, and then they will all head south. So they will be headed in a southerly direction from the north, turn right into the site, then turn right as they exit the site and be headed in a southerly direction along Alabama again. And as a matter of fact, now they must exit from existing Alabama. They all exit and are directed in a southerly direction, so it's not a big change. The automobile traffic is located at the median cut that exists at Alabama, so that we can have left-hand turns into the site and left-hand turns out of the site for automobiles. So that is the way it's planned. A traffic study and county regulations could change some of that. So this isn't final, but we're moving toward this objective, and it seems to be a direction that will stick.
And the main idea here was to separate the bus traffic from car traffic. The original plan, they kind of commingled and looked like it was going to be best, but this, I talked with transportation, and this southerly entrance and exit works just fine for the buses. They won't have any trouble.
It also allows for a right side drop off because they can come around and then head back out. So that's another major change.
But since y'all had some questions, I
Yeah.
think the last
Yeah.
meeting, I want y'all to see the new, we think improved.
Yeah, this plan. No, the questions, I think, we have a,
Have site clearing
Site clearing
proposals, that's the next
proposals.
slide, I think. If you can enlarge that just a bit, they'll be able to read it better. We received 5 proposals. The top rated proposal and the least expensive proposal is Popple Eller, a local organization. Ridge Enterprises was second. And Hancock was third. Having a hard time reading this. I think that Seaboard is fourth. No, Seaboard and Griffith, is it? Folsom, yeah, Griffin Folsom was last. The obvious award is to Popple Eller. We contacted them about their price to make sure that they were comfortable with everything. They are, and of course they have a bond, and so we recommend the award at the listed price there to Popple Eller from Brunswick.
And does this go with your budget that you were looking for that?
Yes.
that'd be on Tuesday night.
And that'd be something we'll take action on Tuesday with your approval.
Mr. Tootin, I know you just said it, but I'll ask you again, you're comfortable with their number? I'm glad it's a local company, and obviously they've worked for us before, and they do great work. It's just when you see that sort of difference, you know, over time, we've always raised an eyebrow to make sure they didn't miss anything, but you're comfortable looking at their documents and their quotes.
That's exactly why we went directly to them.
Right.
And
Okay.
give them an idea as to where they stood. And the other thing that I would report to you, historically, we have great variation in site
Sorry,
clearing.
work, sure.
Probably the greatest variation. The next greatest is site work in general, because there are just so many different approaches to how you do your hauling, whether or not you are able to sell timber, and all kinds of variables. So
Right.
this is not particularly surprising or
Okay.
unusual that there's a great range.
Alrighty, next on the list is Center for the Arts. I don't have anything. Dr. Foley, you have anything to
No,
add?
I mean, we met, I guess it's been maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, a very small group. I think they're wanting to try to meet periodically just to make sure we're on the same page. I think they're trying to keep it within the 20 million that we're, hoping to have at the end of our East Plus. And so they're kind of on track. I think their next step was maybe reaching out to the architect and starting to get some preliminary drawings about it and see what they can do given the parameters of what they want in that facility. So still kind of going, and I think going in a positive direction. So we'll see. But I was appreciative that the college reached out to schedule something so that we can start at least touching base a little bit more frequently. I don't know if you want to add anything to it or anything.
No, we call it programming, needs to be reprogrammed. It was programmed for a different facility initially, and so we just need to target the individual spaces and get clear criteria for exactly space by space what is expected.
Next item is Good Report. Kevin Smith with Good, Integral Good is with us to deliver that report.
Sure. Speaking of East Flush, we have on the East Flush 3, we have 12 completed projects, 10 are in progress. Everyone should have the summary report in front of you. In East Flush 2, we have 4 complete and 3 in progress. We expect East Flush 2 to be completed, fully utilized by the end of this calendar year. Looking at revenues on page 2, we are running over budget, which is a nice thing, by about $6,000. The revenue is greater than the same period in 2018, as well as it is consistent with February and previous years as well. It's a little bit lower than other months, which is the lowest month of the year typically, but it's consistent in past years. We do expect to continue our average of 1.7 million per month as projected, as you can see on page 3, which is greater than the budget that's out there. And so therefore we expect that we continue on this trend. We will have more things to say grace over in a wonderful way towards the goals and other projects that we have before you. That's it. Any questions?
questions about that? No. Quite what you've been experiencing, but still on a positive trend for sure. So, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Boudreau. Our next item is under Focus Area 3 as well, supportive learning environment, and that is the Stop It program. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Haywood.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So tonight we're just going to do a brief overview of the Stop It app. To give you some context for it, we, at the beginning of the year with the inception of student services, one of our tasks was to find out how we can better serve our students. And so we put together a couple of focus groups and participated in student advisory group meetings. And one of the overarching messages from our students was that they wanted to be able to anonymously report any type of safety concern they may have in their school, whether it be concerns about an individual who may be displaying signs of self-harm, or whether it's a bullying situation, cyberbullying, or again, just a school threat. Anything that they felt uncomfortable, they wanted to be able to have that flexibility of being able to report that without their individual identity being acknowledged, to avoid, of course, peer scrutiny. So this is what we decided to do, was to launch this. We launched it in February, and it's at all of our schools. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. It's basically an application that students can download on their phones where they can anonymously report incidents to their school. Students who may not have an end-user device, a phone, can also access it from their school websites as well as from our district website. And there are two sides. There's the Stop It app that the students use, and then there's the Stop It admin, which is what the schools use to manage any events that are reported to them. And so, again, it's an opportunity to empower students to be able to report anything that they may be concerned about anonymously, and it also empowers them to stand up for themselves. And we had a great example of that during our first week after the launch. We had a student who reported that another student was being bothered on a bus, and so we were able to work collaboratively with Dr. Simmons to get that situation resolved immediately. And again, if that student had reported, it may not have been something that was known. So we're seeing some success with the pilot, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue it into next year. So I have a very short video for you that gives you just a little bit more information regarding the app.
Stop It is powerful in serving both as a deterrent and facilitating the upstander effect. The Stop It platform provides schools with powerful tools to report and manage conflict, harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, and any type of harmful and inappropriate behavior. Students are equipped with a mobile app for fast, secure, and anonymous reporting. Stop It Messenger gives you the power to follow up with the anonymous submitter of an incident and conduct a real-time, two-way anonymous conversation, so you can get more information and ask questions, facilitating an effective and efficient investigation. Get ahead of incidents and mitigate risk. Stop It's incident management and reporting system. You decide who will receive and manage real-time reports from students. Time and date stamped records ensure easy compliance reporting and legal protection. Utilize customizable incident attributes in order to build valuable and trackable data in your institution. Built-in reporting tools highlight problem areas, track your progress, and identify trends. And proactively address issues with our alert engine, which automatically alerts you to repeat offenders, behaviors, or other issues. Send notifications directly to students via the Stop It app, such as safety alerts, advisories, or policy reminders. Let Stop It help save you time and mitigate risk with our simple, fast, and powerful solution.
Anyone have any questions? Maybe any clarification? Yes,
I
ma'am.
do. How are the students being made aware that this is available?
So we had a launch kit, basically, as we led up to the actual launching of the app, where our schools were provided with a step-by-step 2 weeks before, a week before. There were videos that we showed during advisement times and during homerooms for students to know. There are posters posted throughout the building, and each school has an individual code for students to be able to, once they download the app, it's free, they put in that code so that way they make a link from their phone directly to their school. And we did that intentionally because we didn't want to just have a general code for Glynn County that anyone could have, and then you would have people reporting things to different schools. We wanted to be able to make sure that students were reporting directly to their school. That way it could be solved as soon as as soon as people are notified versus trying to determine what school it went to and those kinds of things.
Okay. Is there any follow-up? Because I know when we had a student advisory council meeting a week or so ago, some of the children there were unaware that this was in existence. So I just wondered if we're, getting the message out there on a regular basis right now to make sure we don't get anybody, missed or through the cracks with that.
We can certainly follow up with schools to
Yeah.
make sure, but I know that like I said, we provided it to all the schools.
Yeah.
Provided them with posters that they could put up in their buildings. I've gone around and I've seen the posters in the buildings. I also am able to monitor when incidents are reported, and the incidents that have been reported to schools have been addressed. But I certainly understand what you're saying. We can definitely follow up on that to make sure.
Yeah. And then my second question is, is this being monitored on a real-time basis?
Yes,
or is
ma'am.
it okay?
So what happens is principals can monitor it from their phones, but what happens is anytime an incident is reported, they receive an email. So they're able to then very quickly look into it. So it's not like you have to remember to go in and check it. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay.
It will send you a notification. They can also set it up to get text messages if they want to, but most of them have decided to go with just the email, and it's worked fine for those principals that I've been in communication with about it. But like Mrs. Lewis and I were just talking about, we will follow up again. We have a principals meeting next week, so we'll follow up again with them to make sure that we're getting the message out to our students.
Yeah, since it's new, I think that'd be a good idea.
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
They may have said this in the video, but can you push emergency notifications out to people that have the app?
Yes,
Okay.
you sure can.
I think the governor's talking about, I don't know if it's the same app, but there's something I've seen in legislation talking about providing schools with some anonymous app that, we're a little bit ahead of the curve, I guess, but one of the things I think we've been very fortunate in our district is we've had students reporting things, not just through this app, but even before this, but we're just trying to keep it any kind of means where they can report things and be proactive, and so we've been very fortunate, so I appreciate their work in getting this rolled out.
And there's one other thing I want to make sure I mention, Dr. Cole, that anytime, like say there's an issue that's going to involve or needing our SROs, then when administrators receive those notifications, they can link it to Chief Ellis or to an SRO in their building, and then they will get that notification immediately. As well, because of our concern with making sure that students have this access if they are considering self-harm or if they know someone that may be, we also have a 24-hour 7-day-a-week kind of a monitoring service that, because again, at the end of the school day, a principal may not pick up their phone or AP, but there's a system that's monitoring any incidents that are reported, and they look for key words like, they're trying to hurt themselves or something like that, and they then will report that to our local police departments. So we want to make sure that our students are protected at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
All right, our next focus area is focus area 4 under family and community engagement. And Dr. Poulos, I know he enjoys this part of his position, but he's he got selected to be over the attendance and climate committee for our community. So we appreciate the work with that, Dr. Poulos.
If you don't mind pulling that up. House Bill 763 went into effect on the 1st of July of 2018, and basically what it did is it took some of the prior laws, put them together, and also brought out some specific emphasis that needed to be put in place. So if you go to the next slide, the responsibility lies with the Chief Judge of the Superior Court, and that happens to be Judge Scarlett, to convene twice a year. It used to only be once a year, now it's twice a year, this committee, and that committee includes a lot of people. And so, I'll show a picture in just a minute so you understand how extensive we're talking about. It was intended to bring all these agencies and community members together to look at the issues of attendance and look at the issues of overall climate, as they call it, but that talks about discipline and mental health and many other things. The bottom bullet there really is the emphasis here is that school boards are required by that law to participate in that committee and to also take a look at the recommendations and to post in a conspicuous location the decisions on that. So go to the next one if you don't mind, please. part of the requirements is to adopt a written protocol, attendance protocol, and again, we have regulations that are in place. And so as part of this committee is to come up with recommendations that deal with, how do you deal with dropouts? How do you deal with increasing, the attendance at students for various tests, as well as, what else can we do about different disciplinary issues? And so I know that we have those subcommittees that are looking at each and every one of those areas. So if you go to the next one, if you will, please. We met in December, and you'll see that, we had a great turnout, various members from different organizations to include, the judges, as well as the solicitors, as well as, our local law enforcement, our fire department, fire marshals, emergency management, mental health. I mean, it was a great, great turnout when we did it. We'll do the exact same thing in June. Next one, please. Some of the requirements that are still out there, again, is that it states every school will have a safety plan. And I think that, we've had safety plans in place, but it also includes that the approval process is expanded. So in this case, one of the most important parts of this is that, our local law enforcement agencies will coordinate with, and our local law enforcement agencies would be chief, will coordinate with others. They would approve those pleas. They went out and did an assessment of each and every one of our schools as part of this and developed a written checklist to see where we stood, and then went to emergency management and had all of our plans approved. So as it stands right now, every one of our schools has an approved plan. The other part that added to this was to include the local juvenile court system, and so Judge Chapman's worked closely with us in this process. That last bullet on there is new as well, and that the emergency plans are no longer subject to the open records law, which I think is very important, so that somebody can't pick it up and figure out how we're going to respond to an emergency. If you go to the next one, again, some of the things that have to be included in the safety plans were delineated in the law. We've already addressed, the majority of these things through our process because we care. And so when you talk about some of the things, school threat assessment, the mental health piece, and, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of these major incidents occur with somebody who has had a mental health deficiency. And so, that's an important and vital piece to the process. And you also see that, the preparations, the plans, and just that partnership that's there. So, Chief, is there anything you'd like to say about that? Okay, so you go to the next one. Again, the attendance protocol, it talks about what has to be in there, and just trying to make sure that we build the capacity to try to make sure we have more students in school. We can't teach them if they're not there. We also know that historically that a student who has attendance issue has an issue with whether or not they'll graduate, and has an issue with whether or not they'll be in the jail system at some point. And so the majority of the kids that are in jails, statistically, they run those and say they've dropped out, they had bad attendance in school. So I think they run together, and we try to curtail that. If you go to the next one again, please. Emergency drills. This is something that they emphasize, and I think we do a great job. Chief has come together on a lot of these. If you go to the next one, a sample of that. We've increased when they hold drills. I mean, so the first 10 days of school, we've always pretty much held a fire drill. But then, when do we start having a yellow lockdown? When do we start having a red lockdown? It's futile to have a red lockdown that tells kids how to respond in an actual emergency in January when something could happen anywhere in between. So as well, we want it to be instinctive that says if we go into a yellow lockdown, what do you do? If you go into a red lockdown, what do you do? So those drills are throughout each and every month, as well as our regular fire drills and some other ones that are there. If you go to the next one, please. We broke down into 4 different subcommittees, and so we're going to talk real briefly about those 4 committees. One was obviously disciplines. Part of the requirement was there to do it, but we saw an issue, and we've talked about it over the last couple of years, the issues of our gangs in the area, the rampant issue that we're seeing right now, pervasive issue with vaping, and the issues of vaping with alternate types of content that are getting students high, the access to those, as well as just drugs overall. And so, we talked about what can we do. We did start increasing the drug sweeps throughout the year, and we've made them unpredictable. And so, I think that's been something that has obviously enhanced it right now, is that the students at one point used to know, well, the drug dogs are here. So it would go from one school to the next, they start texting. Well, we don't always hit them in that sequence any longer, so I think it's really made a difference. Also, just making sure we're reporting things to DFACS, and we have a requirement under the law that if a student has been using drugs, that we report it. We're supposed to try to get their assistance in this process. The CHAMPS program, and I think most importantly, and Ms. Lewis can chime in here, is about education and starting a curriculum earlier and earlier so that we can educate our students on the significance of not using drugs and not being part of the gangs that are there. So the CHAMPS program's kicked off in our elementary school, and that'll continue to grow as a partnership with the Sheriff's Department. You see some of the other things that are there, and I do think as well, just offering the videos, including our resource officers in the training piece to our students. They're in the schools every day, and so making them accessible and referring these cases to court. Anything else you'd like to say about that? All right. Next slide, please. Mental health, obviously, again, as we just talked about, it's a concern. And it's not just a concern about our students' mental health, but, we have community members that come to our schools. We have, faculty members that may have an estranged spouse. I mean, we have to be concerned about all of those different situations. And when you look at the atrocities that have happened throughout, the nation, many of those issues come about because of a mental health deficiency that we need to try to be proactive about rather than reactive about. So, we're looking at that, we're working at it, and as Ms. Haywood just mentioned, that implementation of the Stop It app, I think that's a vital part of this so that we can try to be ahead of the game rather than behind. Anything you'd like to say at all about that, Ms. Haywood? Yes, sir. Okay, if you go to the next one, Dr. Whitehead had the attendance meeting, and they had a great meeting. A lot of great things came out of that meeting, and I think if you don't mind talking real quick about the public service announcements that they've started.
So I felt like we did have a very good working group, and as we were talking through, just sometimes it's the simple things, that can possibly plant a seed for people, I guess. And so we're actually reviewing, Mrs. Haywood and I are reviewing some of the protocols for sending home notices to parents to put absences in context. So if you just get a letter that says your child has missed X number of days, some parents truly may not understand that that's a lot different than the other children in the school. So just putting it in context, so we're looking at some different formats. But one of the, it was actually a suggestion from Chief Powell from Glynn County Police. He was in my working group, and he kind of brought up the notion that, for those that would date themselves, about, it used to come across your TV, it's 10 o'clock at night, do you know where your children are, kind of thing. And he said, why don't we have messages out on the radio about school has started, where are your children, kind of thing. And so I asked Mrs. Tate to help me with that project, and she and Miss Haywood developed some scripting, and local chiefs, I think each of the chiefs and Sheriff Jump and Dr. Cole and others have gone to the radio station to record some PSAs. And so as soon as, I guess I'd say Mr. Willie, but Mr. Sousa finishes editing those are going to start airing in the mornings on the radio. Just a public service announcement out there. But we have some other things in the works that hopefully we'll have out to you soon. But definitely we ended up having some great conversation about hopefully some positive movement in that area.
Ms. Tate says they just started today.
Oh, awesome.
Good.
I missed
That's
it.
awesome.
Okay, good.
Good.
Thank you.
They're at 8
Thank you.
o'clock.
Yes.
If you go to the very next slide, and it's the very last slide, again, it talks about safety. And so, as I mentioned earlier, that we have all of our school safety plans have been approved through our emergency management folks, and we just don't put them on a shelf. So part of this is to continue to monitor, to adjust, and I hate to say it, but as real world situations take place, I asked Chief Ellis again, what lessons can we learn from these and incorporate? And I think that's got to be a routine that we continue to think through. So there are opportunities out there as well through a program called Safe Schools. The Georgia School Board Association provides it's free. So we're trying to put something in place that all of our faculty members, all of our employees can go through and watch videos that deal with how do you respond to an intruder that comes in? How do you respond to an active shooter? And these are all free of charge to us that we can put out there available to our faculty. The monitoring of the emergency drills, every school reports monthly and sends it into our dispatcher, and they are able to look through to make sure if there's any notes, such as, we found that the the intercom didn't work. We respond to that and ask for us then to try to get it fixed. And I think that's, again, last thing you want is for a real emergency to take place and you cannot tell anybody. And so I will tell you, we learned from a recent incident that was factual. We had to find out that in one of the hallways, they couldn't hear that they needed to go into the classrooms. So we've been able to work to try to fix all those. As you go through these as well, and I've mentioned, I think it's very vital that I think the standard typically is for the local law enforcement officers to respond to an active shooter is about 3 minutes. Well, we're fortunate in behalf of the school board to allow us to have a resource officer in our schools. And so as part of that, they're the likely person that would end up engaging an active shooter. So they need to know how to respond, and it needs to be instinctive, and it doesn't mean, well, we did that 2 years ago. So as part of the requirements for training, our officers are going through that on multiple occasions, trying to make sure that they're trained up. And I think that's an important piece of what we've got. We do still have some issues. We've implemented the comprehensive communication plan, put radios in all of our schools with our own networking, and so that has worked great for our system. Not only has it saved us money, but it's given us one system to work off of. And they're also it increased our ability for schools now to communicate with our buses. That is something we haven't had in the past, but in the event of a real emergency, again, now we have one system that we can communicate on. The plans and procedures for non-school sites, and I talked to Mr. Madala, that's still something that we need to still stress and improve upon. And then we have made huge improvements throughout the course of the year in looking at our cameras and our fencing and our different access codes and things of that nature, campus monitors, and so that's something else that resource-wise we'll continue to assess. But safety-wise, again, we want to make sure that students are able to come to school and be safe, and that parents feel comfortable sending their students to school. That's our last slide, and again, part of that goes back to the requirement that school boards will get recommendations and act upon those. In June, we'll have another meeting. We'll have sub-meetings that'll take place as well. Any questions on any of those, specifically about the 4 subcommittee areas? Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. That's a lot of work, but very well.
Just one question.
Yes,
I'm sorry, we've talked about it a little bit before, but do we have a set guideline yet on after hours things? Obviously, we always have SROs at the stadium for big games and that sort of thing, but 5th grade plays. You've got hundreds of people there and hundreds of kids, and there's never an SRO there. So I've heard there's a guideline, there's a threshold if it's 200 or more people or whatever but I still haven't seen us really kind of do anything, put anything into place. So what's kind of, where are we going with that?
Well, and you mentioned, and I think we said 1 to 250, but as well, if somebody has a need and they think they can ask, and we'll provide the support for it. So all the principals have been given that guidance, Mr. Halsey, and I wholeheartedly agree with you that if you're going to hold a huge event that the public's coming into, we need to have our school resource officers present in order to provide appropriate security. Anything else you'd like to say on that?
The ratio generally, Mr. Halsey, is 1 to 250.
Okay.
National Fire Protection Association is part of that equation. I looked at the retired chief there. It's part of the equation for public safety. And also, if you have an event that, it depends on what kind of crowd, or if there's supposed to be anything that would prompt public safety to be there on top of that. We're a little more attuned to that than what we have been in the past. And it all comes back to budget, being able to put people in the right place and having enough people to staff those events after hours.
All right, thank you.
We're trying to do a better job of staffing those, but I understand what you're saying.
All right, thanks.
Thank you both. Thank you. All right. Our last item under this focus area is principal for the day, and so very excited. I think it went very well. I'll turn it over to Dr. Whitehead to talk a little bit more about this.
So we gave you a little bit of a preview before we were going to have our guests in, just in case you had your students come home and tell you about new principals at the school. We did approach the chamber about partnering with us to do this event. This was our inaugural kickoff for the first week of February. We did have 6 people that applied to come and partner in with our schools, and I know there's a crowd, but I saw Mr. Arnold, so if you'll come on in, and Mr. Akins is there, and I don't know if Ms. Winslet has made it yet in or not. We knew we couldn't have everybody come and share with you, but we were able on the 21st of February to pull everybody back together and try to kind of debrief with everybody what went well, what can we learn from it, because it's our hope to now repeat this the first week of November. during National Education Week. And we did want to invite them in, though, to share some of their experiences with you, and if you had any questions for them. So, Mr. Arnold.
Superintendent now.
That
is.
Is this for the hour?
So, if you don't know Mr. Arnold, let him introduce himself, but he was able to go and join Dr. Joyner for a day out at Risley.
Yeah, so I'm Jimmy Arnold, owner of Peachtree Pest Control, and sit on the executive committee for our chamber. And when this came up, I think again it was a great opportunity for the chamber to kind of see and get involved, in the school system and find out what's going on and what we can do, from the chamber's perspective to try to help. I think first and foremost, to all the educators in the room, the principals, assistant principals. I mean, if y'all have not shadowed a principal, I think everybody needs to. It's pretty amazing and pretty impressive, and I know I've told Dr. Cole several times, but how it operates like a business. I mean, it really does. And Dr. Joyner did a great job. Her and her team had an opportunity to sit in, on the staff meeting. Same thing. I mean, it operates very similar to, as it would in a business, as we would in our branch meetings and admin meetings. So I think, from that perspective, it opens your eyes to see what, the principals do, every day and how they, it's a chess match and a chess play every day, for every minute of every day for them. So, I think too, first I'd say thank you to the school board and, Dr. Cole for coming up with this and then, allowing us to come in. From my perspective, I would just say that, maybe even ask, and continue to ask what the chamber can do to help, and with the school board. And I think this is a great opportunity, continue this, whether it's semi-annual or throughout each year. But, we can absolutely try to get more of the business folks involved in the community to come into the schools and see. And I know for like Jerry and I, our businesses, whether it's technical or service businesses, I mean, one of the biggest things we hear is always workforce development. I can tell you that even working with, Dr. Townsend out there at GICA, that, most of the students in this county, I don't know if anybody's really ever surveyed that, but 90% of them have this big idea that they're leaving Glynn County, And I assured them when I've spoken to them that I promise you within 5 years you'll be back here, and then you'll be knocking on our door to come see us for a job, So, so I think from that perspective, the chamber particularly, what can we do to try to partner on that end of it, even just from the workforce side, letting them, all the students know, especially from 8th grade up to 12th, maybe the job opportunities that are out there, the ones that are going to be around, how do they obtain that job? How do they go into the interview process? So that was one of the things Dr. Joyner and I talked a lot about. And even since then, we've gone back in and talked to, I think it's Jeff Brown out there and his students, already once, and just talking to them about the same thing, some of the, how to get a job and, just some of the do's and don'ts and, the interview process. So, really, I think again, overall, I would continue to encourage this. I think it was a great opportunity. I think that even from a parent's perspective in Glynn County, I think that they need to see it. We mentioned at the last meeting that as parents, we always say, well, we drop our kids off and they go to school and then they come home and we ask them how the day went, But when you get a chance to see really, again, how it operates, it opens your eyes from a parent's perspective too. So again, I think I'll support, the continuation of this and anything that we can do from the chamber's perspective. And then, I think even from the school board's position, maybe, continue to communicate to the chamber on a regular basis. Obviously, we've got a new, chairman coming in, soon. But as we move forward, I think that, what we can do to really, combine our efforts and work together and then continue to support, the school system in that regard. So other than that, and I'll be glad to field any questions or anything. It was a great day, though. I'll say that. Dr. Joyner did a great job for us out there.
So what all did you do?
I mean, everything. Everything. I mean,
what was the most impressive thing?
Well, I think, again, the coordinated effort. I mean, it really, yeah. I mean, it was just, just every minute of every day. I mean, she's fully involved, in the cafeteria at lunch time and then, going into the classrooms, working with her staff, constantly on the radio. Coming back to check emails, and I can say again, I mean, from the time she starts to the time she finishes the day, which are typically 12-hour days, she's nonstop. So, I think that again, just trying to spread that word though, that what they do, and get that out, to the community more. One idea I will say that we did kind of come up with, and I know we talked about it a little bit briefly, but I think every kid in Glynn County has this idea that same thing. They're going to leave and they're going to be superstars, or they're going to be an Adam Wainwright or anything. And maybe one idea is to kind of also put maybe some of the local kids that have gone on and started their businesses or whatever it is, and kind of promote more of that. Maybe whether it's through banners or pictures or again, local business superstars, stuff like that. So to kind of let the kids know, hey, there are opportunities out there. So
You said something really that struck the nerve of my heart, that it's run like a business, and it really is. I mean, our product is good, solid students. That's what we want to produce. I mean, from the community to the school system, just for economic value. So what you just said, that just impresses me the most. From a chairman of a very large corporation.
Yeah, it just, like I said, that was the best reference I could give. How she, ran it like a business. And, and again, I got a chance to see some of the budget items and just an opportunity to kind of see how she has to work within all of that, and some of her, I guess, and I'm not sure what account, but I guess the principals have their account that they have to function, within. So, and then one last thing, and I'm all in support of what we can do, and I brought it up already at the chamber, and we've kind of talked about, but, like with the Chromebooks in the school system, what the chamber could do to continue to help with that. I know that the limited funding may be on some of that, but I was kind of surprised of how few maybe were in the school systems. I didn't realize that. And, I think that there again, from a business community, that could be a helpful avenue maybe to generate more funds to help, get the Chromebooks in the system. So just another thought. So.
And I think you're joining us tomorrow.
Yeah, somehow I'm now in the technology. Wait a second. I actually told him, I said, you sure you want me on the technology meeting?
And we also asked Mr. Akins to come from a city principal's perspective, just to give you an idea of some takeaways that he had as well as part of the day.
Good evening. So I was had the opportunity to have Principal 4-Day with Craig Miller from. Yes, I get them banks mixed up. So it was great, and I think very similar to my other colleagues. He spent the day with me. He told me, he asked when did I want him to get there, and I said, well, I'm going to get there at 7, so you can get there whenever. So what did we do? He did everything. He just followed me. He was my shadow. So we did a lot of cafeteria duty, traffic duty. I took him on observations. We had probably like 6 or 7 teachers out that day, and we had 3 subs that didn't show up. So we had to kind of work through that process of what do we do with that. We spent a lot of time in classrooms. He helped entertain a child that the bus was late to pick him up, kind of thing. And so that was a good experience for Mr. Miller, I believe. And then we spent some time with teachers. So I had a teacher planning data meeting, and so he sat in there with us and kind of participated in that conversation. And my biggest takeaway was that meeting. And what was special to me about that time was I didn't realize, I just kind of I knew we were doing it, and I was like, come on, follow, this is kind of what we do. But I didn't realize the impact that I would see in my teachers' faces. So you could tell about getting towards the end of the meeting, and then after he left the building, when they came back and talked to me about it, how important they felt to be able to talk about what they do every day with someone from the business community. And I think that it was just a moment in time where they really felt like that somebody else acknowledged and recognized what they were doing. And then Craig even kind of helped find some commonalities of what he does as a banker and to what they do as teachers. And so it was just a special moment. You could see their sense of pride to be able to talk about what they do every day with kids and how hard they work And so that was just a good moment in time for us. And my other takeaway is that I would welcome it any day, all the day, every day. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a great thing for our community. When we kind of had our little debrief session, I said there was to talk about how to support us, and I said the way to support us is to come to our schools and see what we do. And we need, and we want, or I want, the voice in the community to recognize the positive things that teachers are doing every day, and what kids are doing every day. And for me to have somebody in the community come and see that and say some good things and acknowledge it was a great thing. And so to me, I kind of feel like that's the beauty of the program, and what I want to see more of is just more people to see what's going on in our schools, see the good things that are going on in our schools, and talk about that. So I would do it tomorrow. Well, tomorrow I'm going to a Teacher of the Year banquet. Maybe Monday.
I was looking to see if Miss Winslet made it in. I don't see her. We also had someone from the high school, and I know life happened, so she may have been way late with something else. But just wanted to give you a chance to, hear from them. It was powerful. I took, lots of notes when we met the other day, and the resounding thing was from all of the guests, particularly the guest principals, had to do with that first hour of the day. They were like, everybody was blown away with what happens the first hour of the day. As another component, we had students from the Career Academy that were able to go to each site whenever we had the principals there. So they've captured some video clips that we're still working on trying to get in a finished product for sure. And then we'll unveil that and be able to share it with the chamber as well as have it out there just to kind of highlight all the activities we've had. So. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
One thing real quick for Carter. Craig is my Citizens Oversight Committee appointee, and what people don't realize, or most of us probably do in the room, but Craig is married to a principal.
Yes.
Terry at Stilla Marsh, and I was talking to him about the experience, and he said, Marcus, he said, Carter blew me away. He said, I'm married to a principal, and I didn't realize what all she does. He said, it made me appreciative for what she does. And knowing how early she leaves, where you said 7 o'clock, usually the principal's going to be the first ones there and the last one to leave every day. So as far as setting the tone of the school, so Craig was really blown away, Carter. So he said he thought a lot of you. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you guys for doing
cancel his golf match.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Thank y'all both for being here tonight, and Jimmy willing to come in and give your perspective from the outside looking in. And as we spoke after the program, and I've spoken to Craig as well and a couple of others, and everybody had positive things to say. I think the main thing that I guess the rookies, if you will, took away from it is exactly what you said, exactly how much stuff goes into the day. And I think that's just a salute to you guys that's here with us today of what you do. And it's a shame that folks, parents and, even other school personnel really don't know exactly what you guys do in the classroom and how much stuff goes into it. It's not just, clocking in at 8 and leaving at 2 or whatever anymore. And so from our side, we do appreciate what the whole crew is doing, and you, Dr. Cole, is actually implementing this program. And I think the more, as you said, Jimmy, congruent we can get with everyone, not only from the business community, but just everyone in general, just the community itself, parents and everybody else. That may be something we want to do as well, is try to bring in some of the parents and, let them, especially the ones that complain a lot, let them come back and see exactly what you guys have to deal with every day or whatnot. But
Some
anyway,
of those same ones that complain that I've heard, I've also come back to them and I'm like, hey, I tell you what, you really need to go see what goes on there.
Right.
Try to put more.
Well, again,
positive
thank you
spin
for
on it.
being here tonight and putting your opinion back in, so that it means a lot. I think that's the key, as we always say in every program that we do, is you got to get the feedback, and you got to figure out whether it's negative or positive or whatever it is. We can't improve if we don't know what we're doing wrong. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Mr. Carter, I think a lot of people, as principal, like, oh gosh, here we go again.
Yeah.
But I think they realize the benefit of this, and I think just as we grow this year after year, those people getting our community and understanding what goes in our school system and supporting us in different ways. We've already thought of ways with our student advisory group we can bring in people from the chamber to speak to our students from a leadership capacity. So I think there's going to be a lot of just great conversations, and really appreciate your support, and looking forward to this continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much.
Thanks, Gardner.
Thank you.
All right, that was our last item of information. The last area we have is our proposed action items. As you know, this is the areas where we will take hopefully action on Tuesday. The first one is a review of the renewal of the Edgenuity for 2019-20, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Lewis for that.
We do this every year, so if you go to the next one, it kind of gives the next page on that, Chris. Keep going. Keep going. Is that it? Okay, there's 2 pages to it, but the price of which is $87,500. And so this is, again, the program that we use for credit accrual, as well as credit recovery and credit repair in our high schools, as well as the Glynn Learning Center and some of the other middle schools. Again, it's a great program. This is a little less than what we paid in the past, but slightly less, but it's every year we go through this. We would ask on Tuesday for your approval to continue with that. Any questions at all about that particular program? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. The next item we've already talked about, unless there's any further question, that was the Altama site clearing proposal, which Mr. Boudreaux and Mr. Tooten reviewed earlier. That will be on there for Tuesday as well. The next item is the review of the bid for the bid 1929 computers and touchscreen monitors for food nutrition. I'll turn over, I guess, Ms. Preston, if you'd like.
Yes, Ms. Lewis is here for any questions, but they're for the cafeterias, updating the computers for all the cafeterias.
Do you want to add, Ms. Lewis, at all? Or?
Ms. Saunders and I tried to research from the last time these are the point of sale units, the cash registers, if you will, when the last time they were replaced, and we cannot find any documentation on that. So and the technology department will tell you they're failing fast. They've repaired them as much as they can repair them, so that's the need for this.
Any questions about that? So it'll be our recommendation to accept that bid for on Tuesday. And the last item is a review of the January 2019 financial report, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Preston as well.
So for January, we had some budget amendments to the general fund, which actually changed the revenue and expenses of the general fund. There was a increase to the revenues and expenditures for $1,000 for the teacher scholarship, for a teacher scholarship at Glendale. I had a retiree call me and wanted to contribute to the scholarship fund of our school system, and I said, well, we don't really have a scholarship fund, but we have teachers that we grow our own program. And he said, well, I want to give $1,000 to a teacher to help offset their expenses to become a teacher. And they worked at Glendale forever. It was the clerical staff. And so anyway, I got the check and we put it in the general fund, and this teacher will get reimbursed for tuition, I think, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. Wow. I would believe. Budget revenues expenditures were decreased by $500 for the Teacher of the Year state grant that's not being funded this year. Budget expenses were decreased by $60,000. I actually was able to remove some of the flood insurance budget because of the new FEMA floodplain rules. So our costs have gone down for flood insurance. Expenses were decreased for when we did the refresh for the servers. The lease was less, so I took $60,000 out of the budget. And then the Edgenuity was actually $2,400 more last year than this year, so I took that out. Year-to-date revenues represent 77.2% of the budget. Local taxes received in January were a little over $2.3 million. Expenditures were 53.5% of the budget, and we're about 58% growth. My report's always a month behind good, so you've already heard December sales tax collections received in January an amount of a little over $2 million. That was 7% higher than last January of 2018. As of January, we're tracking 13.92% higher than last time this year, so we're doing really well with the sales tax. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Preston, and that should be again on our one of the items we'll vote on Monday to accept that financial report. And that concludes all the items we have.
Thank you everyone for reports. Before we close out, I just want to say thank you again for all you guys being here and what you do every day. I see some great faces that I've been able to, lucky enough for my kids to be experienced with you guys, and it's been, you know, all three of them. I haven't had one, well, maybe not, maybe one negative. It was on me, not on you. No, thank you so much for all you do and what you do, and just you being here and being a part of the program means a lot, because it means you're aspiring to do something different and make a change more than what you've already made. And to me, that says a lot, you know, that you want to move up and you want to continue to provide for the community, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're providing for the children, but you're also providing for our community. As a business owner, I appreciate that. And, you know, as a person of the community, I appreciate what you do and all you do. And it's not an easy job, and obviously you don't do it for the money. We've always said that, but thank God there are people like you out there, because we need you and we appreciate you. So I just wanted to extend our thoughts and our gratitude for you being here and what you're going through. And please continue to keep up the good work, and not only in the classroom, but to aspire to, you know, be sitting at this table or at the front of the school, hopefully one day. So thank you very much. And if anybody else wants to jump in. Okay.
We just appreciate everything that you guys do. You do an awesome job. Thank you.
Everybody's coming back next Tuesday, right? We'll see who's really dedicated. Find out. About to find out.
Well, thank y'all very much, and y'all have a great night and a great weekend. With that being said, we'll jump into a motion for executive session for land, legal, and personnel.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Harvey, seconded by Ms.
Second.
Bobbitt. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous at 5:54. Thank you. All right.
Jared.
Motion to go in back into open session by Mr. Wilson,
I'll second that motion.
second by Vice Chairman Edgy. Any discussion? All those in favor? At 7:32. Got that darn cool.
packet there.
I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Motion by Ms. Bobbitt,
Second.
second by Mr. Wilson.
Looking man over
Any
there.
discussion?
Call me later.
All those in favor? That's unanimous.
Cliff notes.
7:32. Thank you all. Good night.
I gotta go.
Oh, Lordy. Don't forget to do your